Welcome to the June 14th regularly scheduled meeting of the Oklahoma City Planning Commission. I'm very, very sorry that we're starting late. I thought I had all this time today, and apparently that was just not an accurate perception on my part. For those of you who have cell phones with you, now's a good time to turn those off. That's what I'm going to do. For those of you who are with us for the first time, perhaps, the way this works is we have a little bit of housekeeping here right at the beginning to take care of, but when we get to the regularly scheduled items or items that are scheduled for hearing, we'll call each one of the applicants up in turn and ask them to explain to us a little bit about what it is they're here asking for. Commissioners may or may not have questions for them. We'll ask if there's anyone else here who wants to be heard on the item, either in favor or in opposition to it. They'll come down, give us their name and address, and explain to us what their concerns or questions or enthusiasms are about the case. We may or may not have questions of them. The commission may discuss amongst themselves a little bit, and then we'll call each item for a vote. I'm told that there's an item on the agenda for continuance today that is being continued due to a little bit of glitch over noticing requirements. It's the home sharing ordinance or proposed ordinance. Is there anybody here today to be heard on that item? Because we're not going to hear it. No? So apparently the glitch worked out. If you have, do I have any? I do. I have one. If you want to speak on an item, there are some forms like this on the table outside. If you would fill one out and give it to our clerk, that would be very helpful. So let's just start. The first thing we need to do is receive the minutes of the May 24th meeting of the Planning Commission.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second to receive the minutes of the May 24th, 2018 Planning Commission meeting. Cast your votes, please. Well, we're barely squeaking by today, aren't we? They are received. We have continuance requests.
Okay, I'm going to read for the record the items that have been continued on your agenda. Item B19 for case PC 10-533, defer to July 12th. Case item B20 for case PC 10-534, defer to July 12th. Item B21 for ED 222, defer to July 12th. Item B22 for case PUD 1681, also defer to July 12th. Item B23 for case C6979, defer to July 12th. Item B24 on the agenda for case C6991, defer to July 12th. Item B25 on the agenda for PUD 1670, defer to August 9th. And item B26 for the home sharing ordinance, defer to July 12th.
Is there anybody present to be heard on any of those items? If not, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to continue items 14 and 15. Did we include those? Or those no's? So items 19 through 26. Would you cast your votes, please? They are continued.
We also received two new requests for continuance for item B14 for case SPUD 1064 to defer to July 12th, and also item B15 for case B17 to defer to July 12th.
Is there anybody present who wishes to be heard on either of those two items? If not, I'll take a motion.
Move to continue.
I have a motion and a second to continue items 14 and 15. Would you cast your votes, please? And they are continued. We have a consent docket, which are items that are fairly routine for consideration, so routine that we think that we can just approve them as a group.
There are four items on the consent agenda. Item 1 is case C-6989, the final plat of the lakes at Timber Ridge. Item 2 is case C-6995, the final plat of Quail Springs Village street dedication. Item 3 is ABC 930 to rezone to ABC2 overlay of an I-1 district. Item 4 is ABC 931, another ABC2 overlay of the C3 district.
Is there anyone present to be heard on any of those items? If not, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve items 1 through 4. Would you cast your votes, please? They are approved.
Under items requiring separate vote on your agenda, item 5 is case C-6992, the preliminary plat of Afton Grove.
Good afternoon, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. This is the plat for a PUD that you heard just a couple of meetings ago over off of Council south of Memorial. The plat, I will note, not only conforms to all the subdivision regulations, but also it is identical to what we showed you during the PUD. Essentially, the plat map was made a part of the PUD by reference as an exhibit. 35 lots. We are platting these in such a manner that would allow the units to be split in half and sold individually. So 70 total dwelling units on 35 duplex lots. There are a couple TEs, all of which we agree to. We'd ask for your approval.
Is there anyone present who wishes to be heard on this item? Commissioners, do we have questions? If not, I'll take a motion.
Make a motion to approve the application for C-6992.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item C-6992. Would you cast your votes, please? It is approved.
Thank you.
Item 6 is case C-6994, a replat of Lot 3, Block 2, and Common Area A of Council Heights Industrial Park.
Madam Chair, I want to have to recuse myself from this case.
No variances.
Before we go through this, it's my understanding that staff has not completed their review of this and are not completely comfortable with where we are on the drainage issues, I'm assuming. And I'm really not comfortable with the idea of just kicking this down the road to council. Would really like to see it continued.
Well, so we agree to the TEs, and TE number 2 is an approved flood study is needed. So we can't do anything, and it is worth noting, we have submitted the study months ago. Staff came up with a round of comments, all of which we agreed to or modified to what they said. We resubmitted it, and then a lot more time passes and new comments are discovered. So Mr. Dillon with Craft and Toll has performed a flood study. It has been submitted months and months ago. I'm not sure what additional time Public Works needs, but again, because we agree that TE2, if for some reason the flood study ultimately doesn't get approved, nothing matters anyway. So this is one we've been working on for quite some time, both through the city and with the Corps. What Mr. Dillon did was a flood study to find out what part of this common area is able to be buildable, and that's where we drew this line. So all we're doing is trying to plat the part of the common area that is no longer needed to be in the common area based upon the data that the flood study reflected. So I appreciate Public Works' desires, but months and months have gone by, and development and transactions are kind of hinged on this application, and I think at this point it would be an unreasonable request to force us to continue in perhaps perpetuity while Public Works continues to come up with more comments.
How about if we continued it just until the next meeting and not in perpetuity?
Well, again, I don't know that anything's to be gained by that. Because of TE2 requiring the flood study to be approved that we agree to, there's nothing to be gained from a continuance. If ultimately Public Works decides they can't approve the flood study and they don't agree with us, the whole thing goes away anyway. So it's contingent upon that flood study.
Let's hear from staff on this. Yeah, I'm sure it will. Give them a minute. Hello. So give us your assessment of where we are on this.
We are on the second set of review comments for this flood study, and the latest one we received 2 days ago. So we are in the process of reviewing it at this point.
And, I mean, do you have a sense of whether this is something that can be worked out, will be worked out? Are there still a lot of issues to be resolved? Are we there? Are we almost there? What's the deal?
I feel as though it will be worked out. You know, we are working with the engineer at this point to address the comments together. So, without knowing, because it is part of the ordinance that the floodplain needs to be within the common area, and so we're just making sure, we need to make sure that that is indeed going to be the case.
Commissioners?
It seems to me we're talking about the common area here that's impacted by the flood.
That's right.
By the flood study. This wooded area down here by the creek. Is that a creek that runs through there? Is that what that is? This little panhandle there.
Uh-huh.
It's the pan of the panhandle, right?
It's a piece of
notch
it.
out.
Ms. Lincoln, if you could go back to the one you had.
I guess, I mean, so far as,
Go back.
are you going to lose anything, Kendall, in your development if it extends up a little farther? Is that what the issue is?
Well, it is extending up further. So, okay, so if you see, so what we've basically done is try to square it off.
Right.
Now it's an awkward shape. So we're leaving that bottom piece. We're essentially just squaring off the lot. And we picked that line after he did the study to confirm where the floodway, floodplain, and all that currently exists.
So the line across there, not the subject site line where it dips down, the line above that semi-square
Yes.
is what your study says is now developable,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, it's that triangle piece above where that subject,
And so if it's not, then you just lose a little more land.
and so be it, whatever.
I mean, I guess it'd be my point. If it extends up another 50 feet, you guys got 50 feet less.
And that's right. And that's why I don't know that I want to agree to continue this, because this is a purely technical, whatever it says is what it says and what we're going to have to do. And so I don't know if there's more to be gained from Planning Commission hearing that, yes, now they've reviewed it and ready to go. I mean,
Well, I mean, it doesn't seem to me that it's going to be significantly alter one way or the other what we approve. It'll be a little bit more or a little bit less, or it'll be right there. I mean, it'll get worked out one way or the other.
right, because we agree to the TE that says an approved flood study is required, whatever gets approved is what we have to live with,
And then that may just require you to reconfigure your lots a little bit.
perhaps.
One would be smaller. It may not. I don't know what allowance you... I mean, look, it's a dead-end cul-de-sac industrial development.
Right.
It's hard for me to get too excited about losing 50 feet off one of the lots or whatever it ends up being. It's not going to impact, in my view, anybody that's around there, only this particular piece of ground. So I'm less concerned about this because of that I see impact toward others and because of the TE. That's my view. I don't think we gain a lot by waiting. And if it's been going on for some time, I think we have somewhat incumbent that we move it forward, but that's, again, just me.
Do you agree with Mr. Boss's assessment that the TE provides enough comfort's not quite the right word, but assurance that it'll either work out or it won't, it'll be this or that?
Well, I mean, of course, we wouldn't have provided the comment if we didn't think we needed some more time to, make sure that that the common area encompasses what it needs to encompass to make sure that it abides by the ordinance. And like I said, I mean, it isn't approved at this point. It's still under review, and really that's the extent that I would like to take it at this time. I don't have the authority to say yes. We will approve it. I don't have that authority.
Well, I didn't mean that.
But if you don't, right, but if you don't approve it, it won't go any further. Just trying to figure out, if you don't approve it, none of this will just go on and we'll have to do a whole new deal, right?
Yeah, I mean, if we don't, I mean, it would be modified. I mean, I'm sure that we would work with them to say, this is where the line needs to be. And so, I do feel like it will be changed, during this process. I just, we want to make sure that that is where it should be,
Okay.
or where it could be.
Commissioners?
With that TE, I mean, for me, that does it.
I guess I don't know that we add a lot of value add, us, the commission, to the next round. So, that being said, with the TE as it states, I'd move it. I'd like to move it ahead, so I'll move approval.
Second. I have a motion and a second to approve item number 6, C6994. Would you cast your votes, please? It is approved.
Thank you. Well, for the record, you want to reflect that Commissioner Cravens wasn't here?
Let's do.
And it didn't vote,
Yeah.
more importantly.
No, it was not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Item number 7 is SPUD 1062 to rezone 2149 Southwest 59th Street from O2 to PUD 1062.
Once again, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. This is an application on Southwest 59th that'll take this piece from O2 to an SPUD that will allow some multifamily provisions. This is a part of the city that is close. It's right next door to the hospital. So what we'd like to do is some form of multifamily, whether it be senior independent living or traditional multifamily. The zoning to our west is R4. We believe that the use is compatible and consistent with what you expect to see around large medical complexes. There is one TE that we agree with. I would note for the record that this is an urban medium designation under the comp plan, so the densities that we propose within our SPUD is consistent and compatible with the comprehensive plan, and staff does recommend approval. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I'll move approval of item 7.
Second?
Second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 7, SPUD 1062. Would you cast your votes, please? It is approved.
Thank you.
Item 8 is SPUD 1065 to rezone 4401 West Memorial Road from R1 to SPUD 1065.
Good afternoon. I am not David Bucks. Tim Johnson here on behalf of the applicant. This is a SPUD that is directly north of an SPUD that we did a number of years ago to provide additional parking for the office and retail development south. This particular application is to add additional parking, as you can see in yellow. That will be an expansion of the parking needed for a new office building that's being constructed here called the Gaillardia Physicians Building. These two parties have worked together and resolved and come up with a lease to allow the shared parking and circulation through both tracks, which is a win-win. We're putting the extension of Meridian Avenue as a two-lane road into the project and will allow for circulation through both projects. As you can see, the likelihood of any development north of this tract is pretty slim. It's about 1,000 feet of floodway. And I doubt that we'll ever see it developed. There is some developable land east of this new parking lot that's proposed that will also take advantage of this development of a parking lot. So the staff didn't have any TEs. We'd request your approval.
Commissioners, do you have any questions? Is there anyone present who wishes to be heard on this item?
If there's no more discussion, I'll make a motion to recommend approval to City Council on SPUD 1065.
Hold on just one second. I'm sorry.
I just had one question too. Jim, on site-proof screening, we don't typically see language saying it's not required unless adjacent to an established residential use. We just see that it's not required. If that site-proof screening from the landscape ordinance really won't be affected because that area to the north isn't developable,
Correct.
then it seems to me that the language that you need is just that it's not required, period.
If we can amend that.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Do I need to read that amendment into the motion?
Might be a good idea.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to recommend approval to City Council on SPUD 1065 as amended and agreed.
Second.
I have a motion and second to approve item number 8, SPUD 1065. Would you cast your votes, please?
Thank you.
Item number 9 is SPUD 1066 to rezone 7101 Miramar Boulevard from R1 to SPUD 1066.
Thank you. My name is Brad Rice. I'm here as the possible owner of that property. Currently, it's under contract contingent upon zoning as well as finance contingency, which really it's all around the zoning. I do have a letter I'd like to give each of you that Debbie Martin had received today from DHS. If I could have that passed out. So with me today also would be the operator or the tenant, Mike McPherson from Spec Home for Boys. So if you have questions around the operations, he's here to address that as well. With this SPUD, we've met with city planning and a number of other departments, and the request is not to have, because of some special circumstances there, this has been a non-conforming use for 50 years approximately, since the 60s as a restaurant. There is a very highly capable water system, septic system there as a treatment system that we've talked to Vanessa and Nathan about. I have a letter that they would not adamantly argue the fact because of that system, DEQ, they have all the documentation. The same thing with water, sewer, and fire to the property. It's actually about 2,000 to 2,700 feet away, depending on which one we're talking about. So it's not right adjacent to the property. There's roughly 2,000 to 2,700 square feet of linear space to get those there. So that would not be something that we could have happen to make this project work. So we're asking that those sections, I believe it's 3B7B, 3B8A, and 3B8C be stricken from the request. And then we also have existing pole lights there. There's 8 or 9 of them on that property around as security lighting. So if there's issue with that, those already exist based on the lighting comment on here. Thought I'd start with that. There may be other dialogue or questions that come up.
I'm a little bit uncomfortable with the idea that this property, which is, on this heavily wooded piece of property, I assume is not sprinkled, is not going to have a fire hydrant nearby and city water.
The intent is, meeting with Mike Wilson from Fire Department, is that we do plan to have residential sprinklers inside.
Oh, it is going to be sprinkled.
We would intend to have residential sprinklers. That's part of my budget, to have that come off the water well. And he's given some direction as to what piping would be required for that. So we already have an estimate from Simplex Grinnell for the fire of that, the fire sprinklers.
Well, that reduces my concerns a little bit. Commissioners? Is there anybody else here who wishes to be heard on this matter?
Do you care to hear from Mike about just the operations of it? They already have existing locations in the same ward down near the Capitol at 14th and Lincoln. So this will be an expansion to a fourth property.
About the facility itself and its operation, you mean?
They're the tenant, the operator of it. Okay, just didn't know if he's here in support.
Commissioners, do you have any?
Okay.
If there's no other discussion, I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the application to City Council for SPUD 1066.
And is that without the requirements for water, wastewater, sewer, hydrant?
There's no formal amendment required or agreed to, as I took it.
Right, I'm sorry. I'm talking about the city utilities, public utilities, that the common language is in here. That's what I want to make sure is not part of.
There's not a TE that requires that, so.
Okay.
My motion stands in it. There's not a requirement, so.
Right.
So I have a motion and a second
Yes.
to approve item number 9, SPUD 1066. Would you cast your votes, please?
Thank you.
Item 10 is CE 972 to close an alley located at 1800 Northwest 16th Street.
David Kennedy here on behalf of the applicant. My address is 1601 Northwest Expressway. We have a real short stretch of alley here that we wanted to close. All 4 abutting owners consented to the filing of the application, and frankly, we just request that the alley be closed, and clearly, with the contemplation that we're going to try to foreclose the right to reopen it, assuming that the council closes the alley.
Is it my understanding the rest of the alley is closed, that this is the last remaining open
Remainder
portion?
of the alley to the west has been closed since 1938. So there's no traffic here.
Aerial shows it's all enclosed into people's backyards too, right? I mean, it's been absorbed by the property owners there.
There's trees growing in the alley, there's fences in it, it's not functionally open.
Commissioners, do we have any questions? Is there anyone else present who wishes to be heard on this matter? If not, I'll take a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 10, CE 972. Would you cast your votes, please? It is approved.
Thank you.
Item 11 is SPUD 1060 to rezone 12 Northeast 102nd Street from AA to SPUD 1060.
Again, Tim Johnson on behalf of the applicant. This is, as you can see on the map up there, if you look south, there's been a lot of work done from Britton Road going north, and there's a movement of a lot of medical offices, hospitals that have continued to grow in this direction north to Hefner Road. This piece of property is kind of in that transformational train. And with the property zone to the west of us is O2, the potential of Oklahoma Avenue extending north as the developments south of us continue. We've met with the staff, and we all agree that we think that Oklahoma line is probably the demarcation of office use versus the old estate residential that's been there for a number of years. So given that, we've made this application on behalf of our client to provide for a 4-story office building that would allow for some additional medical offices. The interesting part about this is it's currently served off of the very narrow, undeveloped Northwest 102nd Street. It is our client's idea to work with the O2 property owner to the west to gain a common access to the frontage road, which he and other developers south have been successful doing that in many locations. So I do have some changes that, based on our conversation with the staff after the staff report was released, to address the TEs that were in the PUD. And then Ms. Powers and I had a couple other conversations, and so we have a couple of changes we'd like to make. Addressing the uses, we agree that the fast food use should not be standalone If it's a fast food use, it'd be ancillary to the office user, which is common language that we typically add. The building height, the staff asked us to be more specific about the building height because we just say 4 stories. We will say no greater than 4 stories or 58 feet. The question about site-proof screening, this is similar to what Ms. McDermott mentioned earlier. There's not a current R residential use abutting our property. It's zoned R1, but it's not there. So we are going to amend the language to state that at the time of building permit, if it's an R1 use, we'll erect the fence. But I think by code, if an R1 use comes next to us and builds a house, we're going to have to erect a fence anyway. Staff had some concern about us putting a 20-foot sign, which was in the PUD application, along 102nd Street, and we agreed that we would do no greater than an 8-foot monument, 100 square feet in that location. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the access. So if the cross-access cannot be granted through adjacent property to an improved public street, i.e. the frontage road, developer shall work with Public Works to create a plan to improve Northeast 102nd Street at least to our east property line at the time, again, of permitting. And just for reference, just kind of looking at the use and the zoning, we do have, so this is Oklahoma. You can see all these PUDs and heavy office use has been developed by McBride. HPI's got 2 hospitals under construction. And so the medical uses are continuing to grow this way. We're in the process of putting a signal at Britton in Oklahoma now to help facilitate this from a traffic standpoint. But the hope would be that at some point in time this would reach up there. And so you kind of see how the development's growing. We do have the AA piece to our north. Ms. Powers had some concern about that, but we really believe that at some point in time, that's the higher and better use for that property is going to be office. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So specifically, my concern about that was with respect to the signage on the north face.
Yes.
Have you figured out a way to address that?
We've discussed that with our client, and so we asked in the PUD to allow for a larger sign package on the building, which is common south of us, but he would be willing to restrict it to what the O2 signage is, which is 100 square feet, as opposed to the 225 that we have.
Would it be possible, do you think, to hold off on signage on that north face until and unless the property to the north of you develops? My concern is really about the ambient light for existing residential uses.
I guess I'm concerned about the practicality of how that would work. I guess we can write it into the PUD that there would be no north signage until, or at such time that the property north is rezoned as something other than AA or R1.
What's the current use of that AA property?
There's a small house at the very, you can see it there with a garage.
I would be happy with that. If you think your client would agree.
Most of the
That bothers me more than how big it is, because I understand you're along Broadway Extension and you're set back a little bit, and the need for visibility, I get that. But while there's existing residential there, I worry about the light.
We'll agree to amend the language in the SPUD to follow that.
Commissioners, anybody else have any questions?
So we're agreeing to amend the language to the attached signs that says that you're not going to be allowed north-faced attached signage until such time as this subject AA parcel is rezoned?
Correct.
Okay. A couple more questions on signage. I got a question for staff on that point. Just to be clear, we're being asked for a max wall signage of 225 per side.
Three
right?
sides, correct.
For 3 sides, okay. And on the freestanding sign, you said you're in agreement with the TE not to have freestanding signage?
No, we would agree to an 8-foot monument, and we had that conversation with the staff, and they were okay with that.
That's what I wanted to be clear about. So it's an 8-foot monument sign, 100 square feet?
Yes.
Okay. A couple other questions I had on uses. On the eating establishment, fast food, you're saying you're willing to limit that ancillary to an O2 use? Is that
Yes.
a correct way to state that? So that would be use unit 8300.35, right?
Sure.
Just for
Yeah,
the purposes of
correct.
record? Okay. And then what is, I had not seen these use units for community recreational, both general and restricted. There's 2 types. What is that for with an office development? Help me understand that. What might be there that would require that use unit?
Well, I think our developer wanted the flexibility so that if he had an office use with an ancillary athletic facility or some other use for the employees, the use unit would allow that to happen.
So that would be required to have an on-site facility like that?
That's my belief. I would defer to staff.
Can staff comment on that? I'm kind of curious. I've just never seen this before. This is a bit strange to me. It's use units 8250.2, 8250.3, and 8250.4, one of which, I think it's 8250.4 actually deals with like HOAs, like property owners associations. I just was curious.
Okay, 8250. Sarah Welch, Planning Department. 8250.4, the restricted one, that's things like swimming pools, basketball courts, tennis courts, playgrounds. So they'll probably want that one for any on-site recreational facility. 8250.2, the community recreation general, really is triggered with anything that has lights, outdoor lights. Again, swim centers, tennis centers, playgrounds, playfields. And then you're right, the 8250.3 is the Property Owners Association.
Okay. But you guys agree those would be required in order to support those uses on the property?
We don't have any problem with them asking for them.
Okay. Okay, and then the last one I had was lodging accommodations. Well, out of curiosity, why is that one being requested?
Again, our client wanted to have the flexibility. Not sure that there's anything particularly in mind at that location, but as Sarah had mentioned, staff didn't have a problem with it being in there. I don't know that I don't have anything in any of the discussions we have that has included something that would require lodging.
That's a use that I'm not particularly wild about seeing included when you're anywhere near residential, especially if we say, Oklahoma Avenue is this currently arbitrary dividing line between what staff or we believe might be acceptable office development and what might or might not be acceptable residential development. I drive by Turtle Creek every day. You familiar with that? Mm-hmm. So it's made me a little bit nervous about things like that. Mm-hmm. So I would like to see, if you're willing to remove that, it would certainly garner some support from me there.
I'm sure we can take that out.
And then personal storage, why was that one included as a principal use?
Well, yeah, it probably doesn't have to be a principal use, but they wanted the ability to have enclosed storage for equipment relative to the uses in the building.
You okay making that ancillary?
Ancillary to the office
To the
use.
O2? Thank you very much.
Thank you for taking the time.
Is there anybody else who wants to be heard on this item? Commissioners, have any more questions or concerns, comments? Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to recommend for approval to City Council SPUD 1060 with the amended use units and the amended TEs as outlined. Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 11, SPUD 1060, as amended. Would you cast your votes, please?
Thank you.
It is approved.
Item 12 is SPUD 1061 to rezone 8,000 West Wilshire Boulevard from R1 to SPUD 1061.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Doug Melton, appearing on behalf of our client, Casey's Marketing, seeking to rezone the southwest corner of Wilshire and Council to C3 by means of the SPUD 1061. The client intends to build approximately 4,500 square foot convenience store and gas station there. We've executed a shared access easement with the people to the west, and it appears that the use of this is consistent with the long-term plan for that part of the city, and we seek your approval. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Hi. I had several concerns, not concerns. Let me preface my comments by I think your use is appropriate at the location. It's a major arterial streets. I don't have any problem with the use and the concept. I have some issues with respect of four things. One is, what's your plans for signage there? I note that you're there's not a lot of sign traffic in that particular area, and so I understand that you've asked for C3, straight C3 sign for that particular location.
Okay. I would like to add that we have reviewed the comments that the staff recommended.
Okay.
Those are agreeable to the client, so I want to dispose of that. I forgot to mention that.
So let's see. So then, so you're okay to the boundary screening from the residential, right?
Yes, sir.
And then we want to probably, on the section 1.7, TE2, we would suggest that we say that you'll meet the city's landscaping ordinance, period. Not in the time,
Yes, sir.
leading that at the time of maximum driveway width, you shouldn't have any problem with that. And then the exterior construction, good, you don't have any problem with that?
No, sir.
That's great. Okay, so.
Now, returning back to your question about the signage, Casey's has a national signage program, and I'm sure they will submit signing consistent with their national marketing program, but it will also try to conform, we will conform to the requirements of the C3.
Well, but we may not necessarily want a C3 sign there.
Okay.
There's not a lot out there right now. So there's two things that we have concern. The base concerns is one, that it's a SPUD, but all C3 uses are incorporated into the SPUD. Mm-hmm. So we don't particularly have a lot of limitations on the uses that are going into this tract, which abuts residential. I feel certain that there'll be additional C3 that comes down that corner. So this is somewhat precedential for what keeps moving on down the corner there. So there's several C3 uses that we'd probably like to have a view on, or some limitation with respect of this particular tract. In other words, we wouldn't, if it was you wanted to put in at another time a drive-in restaurant, we got residential concerns there, we might want some additional conditions around that. So I don't know that I can be in support of this straight C3 zoning at this particular location without some conditions placed on that. Okay. So that'd be signs, uses, et cetera. I'd like some vision into those things.
I think it would be appropriate for us to provide some feedback. We're going to ask him to continue the item.
No, I agree.
Okay.
I agree, but I don't have I don't have the list of C3 uses right here that I'd say, gee, I don't think that's
You don't have those memorized?
I don't have them all memorized, right?
Well, let's start there. Would it be problematic for you to continue this item until our next hearing so that we can work with you a little bit in detail on your uses and your signage before we vote?
Well, we're certainly agreeable to doing whatever we can to get this moved forward. I'll have to say that when I had the initial discussions with staff, it was at their recommendation that we said we would conform to C3 and not become specific about this so that it didn't create problems later on down the road.
I understand.
So I certainly understand this, but we followed their recommendations there, so it's...
And I appreciate that.
It kind of puts me behind the 8 ball.
I understand that.
Were there specific concerns that you had about which ones you would prefer to see?
Well, I need the list. I mean, I'd say, gee, I don't want you to operate in maybe a funeral home there or a crematorium. Those are probably not adequate uses, but you know what I'm saying? Because it is effectively a residential area that's
C3 is a
bounded by two.
very wide
This
category
is a
of
big
commercial
application.
use.
We're not real keen on lately, at least I don't know that I am, just rezoning to straight C3 from R1. To me, that's somewhat of a large step, and I still believe in rezoning, don't get me wrong.
Well, and the
And that
plain
would
purpose of
certainly allow your
SPUD.
use, don't get me wrong. Your use, I understand, but are you going to have...
Well, this is kind of, I'll have to say in our defense, this is a little bit of an odd corner. We've got R1, we've got the Spud with a church nearby, we've got R1 across, we've got C3, we've got agricultural, we even have industrial right off.
I understand
And so
the area.
it's, I think it puts us a little bit in a difficult position trying to decide what is going to be consistent for that corner, looking out 10, 20, 30 years in the future, to be very honest with you.
I understand, but...
I haven't seen an application in a long time that I thought was more appropriate for C3 use than the hard corner of an intersection. I get your concerns on the signage, and
Right.
and I also understand that there may be some uses within C3 that would create mitigating circumstances on the R1, so I'm
Right.
with you there, but
Yeah, it's
I'd
those two
really
things
like
are
to
really
give
my
them...
primary issues. And signage and maybe where nail down the uses a little tighter with respect to that, because we do have residential. And look, I don't, again, I think your use is appropriate. Don't get me wrong, but I think there's certain uses in C3 that may not necessarily be appropriate, and I'm a little slow about granting a straight C3 in this particular case. That's it.
And I think that's...
With all of those uses.
I think that's appropriate too. I mean, this is an area, as you know, and this is a horse farm that's going to, certainly will gradually transition to more probably combined residential and commercial uses. And so what happens on this corner is going to set some precedent. There's not a lot of sign competition out there currently. I think we want to be a little, the use you're asking for, your primary use, I don't think any of us have any problem with at all. But the idea of just leaving that sort of as a blank check is a little problematic. I think if you can take some time and work with this, we
I'd
can
be
get
happy
this
to-
bill approved.
I'm going to take the opportunity to be a commissioner and put that on it. I also wear that hat. I would like to return that to you. What do you find objectionable there before we engage with staff?
Well, I think if you could call me and I could go through the uses with you that I would suggest. You can do whatever you want. We could work out the signage. I mean, I don't want to really just sit here and go through every...
Sure. I mean, if there's something very particular and specific, it would make it a good starting point for us to engage with staff.
For example, I would not be in favor of a bingo parlor there. I would not be in favor of communication services antennas, communication service broadcast towers. I mean, the list of C3 uses there's a lot. And so to go straight C3 in an area that's got residential, church, and other features around it. I agree with the commercial uses, but straight C3 with some of these funeral, interment, cremation, including cremation. I was right about the crematorium. The neighbors might not be happy about that. Gasoline sales large. That's a bigger use.
If I might ask...
Hazardous waste disposal?
Sure. I'm sure. Okay, might I ask, if we agree at this point that we rezone a commercial C3 for convenience store and gas stations and car washes, can we go ahead and move forward with this today?
Probably we could get there. We may still have a few questions about your signage. Do you have any information at all with you about their sign package, what they generally...
What do they need?
Like I said, this was at the recommendation of staff. We just want to be able to build this particular business there. 30 years down the road, I'm going to be gone. Someone else wants to fight the battle for the crematorium, then they're welcome to it. I really don't want to engage in
I get that. I think, currently the standard language that we request for signage is monument signs, ground signs, not pole signs.
monument signs or signs. We use those routinely, so there's no problem with that.
Okay. Sarah, can you give me the rest of the verbiage on our sort of standard sign request currently? Monument signs, 100 square feet, isn't it? 8 feet
Yes, the Planning Commission's recommended signage is an 8-foot monument sign, 100 square feet.
We've done other stores in the city,
Which is
so...
quite different than currently allowed in C3.
I would just say, I don't think 8 feet and 100 square feet for a retail use you need more than that. I'll do a little coaching for you
Okay.
I'm just saying, that's not going to be enough, considering there's a 7-Eleven across the street from it that's going to have a larger sign, and, who knows, but I'm arguing against
This
myself.
is your award, and you've been at this a while, so give him some help.
I'd say 12, 15 maybe. It's pretty small still.
That's pretty small.
15 feet, that's not small.
We have a different definition of small.
If you don't mind me asking, I don't know why it's relevant, is this a Casey's General Store, is that what this is?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and are there any in Oklahoma City already? Maybe I should know that.
This our first one?
We have
We want to welcome you to the community,
Yes.
by the way.
4 in Oklahoma City, yes.
Where they at?
I got, this is
Come
Mr.
to
Jesse.
the
This is Mr.
microphone.
Jesse Godfrey with Casey's General Stores.
Good evening.
Okay, so
As
what
you
do I
mentioned,
need?
Jesse Godfrey with the Real Estate Department. I've been heading all of the Oklahoma City development, and we do have,
I know.
off the top of my head,
Which one
3 or
they
4
have?
in Oklahoma City limits.
Gasoline sales.
There's one
Both.
2 miles
All
north
restricted.
on Hefner and Council, but
Large.
we're in the very early stages of working on developing that southwest corner. We have one down at 134th and Penn, over in Moore. We have one on Southwestern Boulevard and 149th, that southwest corner. So we have a few kind of on the southwest side of town, but we fully intend to continue our growth in Oklahoma City and plan to be a presence here in town. So
Can you live with a 15-foot sign?
I believe we can. I mean, I'm not an attorney, but I know that we've been very flexible in the past with what the city requires us to do, and we're more or less just wanting to build our business here in town. So, whatever you guys suggest, we'll make work.
Okay. It seems to me that...
Why don't we do this? Why don't we, okay, so you need gasoline sales large, because that's more than 2. You need convenience sales and service, right?
Yes.
And no eating establishments, you don't have a drive-in. Okay.
You also mentioned car wash. I don't know.
Car wash.
Yeah.
What's car wash there? Personal services. $8,300.14. So 45.14, convenience sales and service. 32. What else? Yeah, she's going to go, once you guys, let's do this, set this to the back, Sarah will get the list of uses, if you guys can step out, and we'll move this to the heel of the docket.
Before we do that, there also was a question about the
Driveway.
driveway out onto Council Road.
Right.
The current placement that's shown on your site plan requires access to and from, in and out of the left turn lane for turning off of Council onto Wilshire, and that's a problem for traffic. So we'd like to see it moved south.
Okay.
I myself would like to see it moved south far enough to be shared, just like the western side of the property will be, so that we can limit the number of curb cuts along Council as this property develops in the future. Was there anything else, Mike?
Well, yeah, because the driveway is non-functional because you'll be cutting across the left turn lane right there, and so that was their big concern. After that, you get past the
I
left turn.
think they're okay with that. Was there anything else that we were talking about? I don't,
Signs, C3 uses.
oh, well, the metal
Driveway
siding, we
shared.
decided we're okay with that, the exterior.
And I think that's it.
Okay, all right. Why don't we do that? We'll push this to the end of the docket, which is not that long, Sarah, just tick-tock.
Okay, you can do it. You know what I want.
We'll see you back
Go
in a
with
few
Sarah.
minutes.
She's going to get the use units if we can get this, I think we can get this resolved.
Okay, we're going to move on to item 13, which is SPUD 1063 to rezone 8100 North I-35 Service Road from I-1 to SPUD 1063.
For those of you who are not here all the time, we don't generally do this during the meeting where we go through things line by line. This gentleman is here from out of town and from Ohio or someplace. I think we're trying to save him some airfare, but
I enjoyed it. David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. I've got a coach over here on my left. All right, so we have an application from I-1 to a SPUD to allow the storage and distribution of various chemicals. So what we've done is within the SPUD, we've maintained the I-1 uses and added the uses that we need for this particular use. I do have a representative from the operator that's here. If there are any specific questions that the commission has, I will note we did meet with staff, and one of the questions that was raised was the specific blending of chemicals on site, and so we have added a limitation that I'll read into the record. The blending, mixing, and packaging of flammables and solvents shall be prohibited. So we did make that modification after meeting with staff, and I believe that satisfied the concerns they had. This is along the I-35 corridor north of Wilshire on the I-35 service road. There are 2 TEs, both of which we agree to. So we'd ask for your approval, and again, there is a representative from the operator if there are specific questions that the Planning Commission might have.
I have one very general question.
Yes.
In our staff report, there is the statement that protections should be in place to prevent possible pollution entering the groundwater from the outdoor storage operations. And I would just ask you, are there those protections?
So as you might guess, we are, the operator is heavily regulated outside of city provisions by federal regulations, state regulations, so all the proper provisions will be in place, will be required to be in place, and shown to be in place prior to their operation because of the nature of their use. Now, I would like to add, on page 3, on our freestanding signs, we'd like the new Mike Hensley version of height for signage.
That's a no.
We are on the I-35 service road, so 8 feet seems a bit small.
It's not exactly a walk-in trade kind of place, though,
Perhaps not.
is it? So, okay. Commissioners, do we have any comments, questions, concerns? Is there anybody else here who wants to be heard on this item? If you'll come forward, please, and just give us your name and address for the record.
My name's Kat Rather. I'm a commercial realtor representing 8400 and 8500, the 10 acres off of Wilshire Boulevard, I-35. And that is, I know, still considered the residential area. And so some of my clients are concerned about what particularly is the industrial hazardous material. What is it exactly?
Do we have an answer for that question?
Yeah, he can explain. And where's the folks that you represent? Where are they located?
There's one. 8400 and 8500 Wilshire and I-35.
Which is where in relation to the...
We're east. We're literally east of where you are.
Okay. So
Absolutely. My name is Kevin Ruschlang. I'm the regional manager for Harcross Chemicals. Everybody's life is touched by chemistry. We do from hand soap to personal care, which is cosmetics. The list would be extensive. In Dallas, Mary Kay Cosmetics is one of our large customers. But our intention is we package most of these chemicals in Houston or Kansas City, and so it will be in containers, and it'll just be a storage and distribution warehouse.
I'm guessing, though, that you do more than Mary Kay.
Oh, absolutely. Well, all industry. If you had water to drink today, that was treated by chemistry. You know, any soda, if you washed your hands. I mean, chemistry makes the world go round. So all industries, you're correct.
So what would be some of the more substantial or offensive hazardous chemicals?
Well, absolutely. So
you might have in your plan. I think that was her question. I don't think she was concerned about aloe.
Well, for pH control for water treatment, they use caustic soda to bring the pH up, and they use hydrochloric acid to bring the pH down. So, I mean, it's a long list. They will be in containers from 55 gallons to 300 gallons, and they will be stored on site with both primary containment and secondary containment.
What does that mean?
So the facility will be contained in case a 55-gallon drum were to leak. Worst case scenario, it's kept in there. The entire facility will be curbed, so if by chance it spilled off the dock, it will still stay within that curb.
I think this is one of those situations where it's sort of above our expertise, I think, to dive too deep into this. I have to rely on the fact that they are regulated heavily by the state and federal governments. Although, with the EPA in the shape it's in right now, I'm not sure how much comfort I have about that. But I really feel like this is something that I'm just not really able to dive too far into here. They have to meet their regulatory requirements. That's about all we can tell you in terms of reassurance, I think.
Okay.
Just for information purposes, what kind of suppressants in terms of hazardous mishaps are in place? I know it's more than sprinkler systems and powder suppressants. What kind of hazard controls are in place?
Well, both environmental, Department of Environmental Quality for our air permits, the fire department, the fire department come out and make sure we have the right fire suppression system. You were very correct. Every regulatory agency possible will be in and visit us, Department of Transportation, just to make sure that we're doing everything right as far as the transportation of our chemistry is concerned. We get a lot of visits every year. Some of our bigger facilities get a lot more visits, but Oklahoma City, which will be a smaller facility for us, we'll have plenty of visits from all the regulatory agencies.
To be clear, though, your facility is not going to be, according to in the mixed language in here, is it, Mr. Box read that the blending, mixing, and packaging of flammables and solvents shall be prohibited. You guys aren't actually mixing chemicals here. Are you simply bringing them in to store them, and then you're distributing them back out?
Correct.
Is that a fair characterization?
Correct. We left that. We wanted to leave that open-ended. If there is a 55-gallon drum that, let's just say a forklift pokes a hole in it, we want to be able to repackage that in a proper container versus having to, bring somebody else in to do that for us.
Yeah. I think anytime you see the phrase hazardous industrial, images of, tire burning facilities creep into people's minds, but it sounds to me like what you're really doing is warehousing materials. You guys are regulated too in how that stuff is kept and stored. There's requirements internally in your warehouse, no doubt, for how certain chemicals have to be kept. There's probably secondary confinement inside you have to keep for materials away from other materials, distance requirements. All those kinds of things are a part of that industrial regulatory use. Is that
very much so?
Could you comment a little bit about that?
Well, it depends on, again, the chemistry. We'll have different rooms in there. We do sell a lot of food-grade chemicals, so we will have a small food-grade storage area. We do have corrosives and oxidizers that have to be kept separate. So it is very regulated. I'm on the commercial side. I've been doing it 23 years. Worked for one company for 13 and Harcross the last 10, and our whole industry is very regulated. One of the things that we wanted to, we're an employee-owned company, so it's in the best interest of all the employees that work for Harcross as a 100-plus-year-old company to make sure that we do everything right every time.
That's it. Thank you.
Have I already asked? Is there anyone? I did because you came forward. Is there anybody else who wants to be heard on this item today? Commissioners? Where are we?
It's an industrial wholesaling use near I-35. I mean, from a use and density perspective, I'm really comfortable with it. I think Ms. Powers' comments were spot on. I don't know how equipped we are to gauge the storage and all the mechanics for corrosives and oils and things like that. But I've seen a lot of facilities like this, and inside their confinements, the way they're regulated, they take all those steps so they can't engage in the business. So I'm not overly bothered by it. I think the use is appropriate for the area, and I support the application. So.
Well, it is hard to imagine where else you would put something like this.
That's it. where you would think it would go. So if there's no more discussion, I'll make a motion to recommend approval to City Council on SPUD 1063.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 13, SPUD 1063. Would you cast your votes, please? It is approved.
Items 14 and 15 were continued. Item 16 is SP 501 to permit a telecommunication tower at 2101 Northwest 16th Street.
Good afternoon. David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. I am here today on behalf of EcoSite for a telecommunication tower that you have previously seen. It's a bit of a strange situation we find ourselves in. This tower was an application that took quite some time before the Commission back on March 8th, so for purposes of the record, I would reassert and reaffirm all the arguments and data and everything else presented at the March 8th, 2018 meeting of the City Planning Commission. The reason we're back here in front of you is because we shifted the tower over approximately 50 feet. It was a request of the neighbors all throughout the process that we move this to the grassy area by the playground. The landlord resisted for quite some time. On the eve of City Council, it became clear that we needed to push them harder. They finally acquiesced to this move because of notice reasons. When we moved it 50 feet to the east, we are required to come back here before the Planning Commission to get another recommendation. I would note that the recommendation on the March 8th meeting was that of approval. It was unanimous. I'm not sure if there's any neighbors here today in continued opposition. I'm happy to go through the entire presentation if you'd like. I do have my site acquisition agent here as well as my RF engineer. Again, this is the same application, still the SP 501. It's just simply split over. So the same technical data apply, the same testimony you heard on site acquisition apply. And so again, to try to perhaps short circuit it, we'd be happy to answer any specific questions. Again, it was recommended unanimously last time, or we'd be happy to go through our A through F exhibits in detail, explaining why we meet all federal standards required for the siting of a telecommunication tower pursuant to the Telecommunication Act of 1996.
Mr. Fox, on my aerial, the outline of the subject site does not seem to consume the entirety of the playground. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. The playground will still be there, the equipment. So we moved it north and east, so we're almost halfway between kind of where that gravel, broken up concrete road was and the grassy area.
Okay. I actually feel a little better about that. I was not a huge proponent of losing the playground, but I do have someone signed up to speak. Do we have any questions of Mr. Box, or shall we hear from Mary McLaughlin? Could you give us your name and address for the record, please?
Good afternoon. I'm Mary McLaughlin. I own the home with my husband, Ted, that is adjacent to the proposal. I do have some photos. Could I pass those to you, please?
So the house that's on the corner there of 16th and...
It's 2131 Northwest 16th. Yeah. Could I...
Sure, absolutely. Why don't you hand them to Commissioner Hensley?
And yes, we have been here. We have been here before, so I appreciate you listening to me again as I speak. My roots run very deep in this particular home. I think I've mentioned that before, all the way back to 1926 when my grandparents bought this home. So we've been a part of the neighborhood for many years. We are standing in fervent opposition to the cell tower and to the rezoning required to allow it. We are no less opposed to this at the second request. With the threat of having the tower compound within 30 feet of our home, a possibility, Ted and I felt pressured and reluctantly agreed to their attorney's proposal to move it. They would move the proposed site a few feet further east in exchange for our silence. We could no longer protest in written form. Both sides have honored that agreement. In the smaller snapshot, or the first page that you see, is actually the shot east from my bedroom window. And the X is where the tower originally was planned to stand. And you'll see a little green bench that I circled, and that is where they propose to put it. If you look a little bit further, you'll see there's quite a bit of open land that is available on this property that is not as close to any of the houses. And again, I will say, having been a part of this neighborhood since 1954, I've seen many changes in the last 5 years, have been so encouraging as we've watched things change and families moving back into this area. A 100-foot cell tower simply doesn't belong here. Not only is there the stark visual impact of the tower, and if you look at the second page, you can see the size of what is being proposed. You compare it to the windows on my home, that's the back of my home, and those are normal-sized windows, and you can see how tall and massive that tower is. There are also very valid safety concerns, not only impact concerns of the tower. The fall zone of this tower is huge. Many cities have also denied placements such as this because of these safety and visual reasons. Around the United States, it's been shown there's about a 10 to 20% loss in property value in situations like this. I'm concerned about the city codes, and there is a code protecting us from this type of thing, and it seems that it's been so easily overridden, meant to protect our neighborhoods, but I'm questioning how they're protecting our neighborhoods. They're meant to grow communities, and I said this last time, where can we go? Where can we turn if we can't turn to our city to help protect us in situations like this? And I will address to each one of you, and everybody in here actually, who wants to come home to a cell tower. You think about this when you arrive home tonight. Look around you. Would you want to be living, raising your family in the shadow of a massive metal cell tower? And that's what is being asked of us. In the last picture, you can see the aerial photo that this placement stands right in the middle of parking lot and what they call a playground. It does have some playground equipment in it. Yeah, actually, my kids probably use it more than I've ever seen anybody else using it. But you can see by looking at that, this is a deeply residential area, and it's deeply R1 as well. Most towers, if you noticed, are built in commercial or public areas, usually right next to another building, kind of a little bit camouflaged. None are next to private homes. I believe this sets a precedent, and the question is, what would stop EcoSite from deciding to put a tower anywhere they want? It's not going to be our city codes showing that. Please consider the negative impact this will have on our historic area. We all have cell phones. I have one, and we all want good service. But is this truly the best placement for a tower? We believe there are alternative sites, and we've offered alternative suggestions to the applicants. We also believe that is simply the easiest and cheapest spot that they have found. Everyone involved will profit nicely from this, all except us who have to live here in its shadow. So ask yourself, how does this benefit our particular neighborhood? Technology is growing rapidly, and towers such as these local ones, though still usable, are being built less and less as the demand for small cell DAS and even satellite technology grows. Consider this lease is for 30 years, not something to take lightly. It is important that our city leaders do what can be done to protect and encourage our historical areas as we continue to grow the city. We are asking our city to do the right thing. Thank you for hearing me again.
Thank you, and thank you for coming. Do we have any questions of Ms. McLaughlin?
Can I ask a brief question?
Sure.
I noticed in the picture, and David, you might be able to address this, the picture that I sent, which shows the south, it has 3 poles, and I noticed on the application it's asking for a monopole, so maybe you can tell us what the difference in that is.
What that means in this context?
So it is, the application just says monopole, but we converted that the first go-around to a stealth tower. And so if you, perhaps we just start at Exhibit Exhibit D. In front of you, if you turn to the second page, what you'll see is a document called Plat of Survey. There you will see in blue the 3 poles representing the base of the tower. It is worth noting that the new location of the tower at its closest point to their home is now 146.96 feet away. I believe it was around 85 feet the last time. There you go, Ms. Lincoln. Yeah, and then if you turn it. So it is a stealth tower, meaning the 3 poles. And if you go to Exhibit C, sorry, Cindy, I'm jumping around on you, you'll see the renderings of the stealth. It is on a church lot, so you'll notice it right there. Go up one. One more, please. You'll see that there's a cross on it. Again, this will allow for the opportunity to co-locate. Briefly, the question was raised several times about small cell technology. What is happening with the rapid development of technology? Why are we going to approve this when perhaps something could come along better? It is worth noting that municipalities are specifically preempted on operational and technical matters by the FCC. So whether or not the possibility exists for some other technology, you are specifically not legally authorized to consider that in your decision. That is preempted at the federal level, not a matter to be considered here at the municipal level. We don't believe we have not complied with everything. This is a special permit, the way the code is set up. There are 2 ways to get one of these towers. You either meet the residential district waiver, meaning you have a certain setback, meaning you're in some sort of emerging area probably, to where there is big open space available, or if you don't meet that, then you go through and you get a special permit. It is listed as an SP under the code in R1, so when the code was crafted, it was specifically intended to allow this use, the use on review. The reason that we need this is because of the success of the neighborhood and the plaza, the increased number of people, specifically the increased number of people that are streaming and using data is what has caused the lack of capacity and the gap in capacity that warrants this cell tower. As I explained last time, erecting new cell towers is not something that these companies do for fun. They're very expensive. It is the means of last resort. What they first do is they try to upgrade all their current facilities that are within the area to see if that perhaps could fill this gap. It wasn't able to do that here. They did upgrade all their other facilities. Then they look at other co-location opportunities. There were no co-location opportunities to fill this gap. If you'll remember, if we turn to the ring, the search ring, which is Exhibit E in your packet, because of the urbanized nature of this area, the search ring was very small. It's a very tight window that the RF engineers provided the acquisition folks to go find. And when you look at this ring, what you will notice is this is literally the only site that isn't developed with a single-family home on it. So I would submit this is not only the only site, but it's the least intrusive means to fill the gap as outlined in the Telecommunication Act of 1996. With that said, I hesitate to launch into the entirety of a presentation and put on my RF, but they are here, willing and able to give you that testimony if you so desire.
I don't think we do. I mean, I think we've heard that. I know there's probably not anything, Ms. McLaughlin, that we can say that would make you feel better about this decision, but the truth is that cities went through the process of trying to prevent the location of these towers, and what happened was that prompted federal legislation to remove that ability from us. I think everyone's reaction to them is put it someplace else. And so what has happened is that the process of locating them has been taken over by the technology. They have to provide a certain level of service. There's only a limited number of ways they can do that. I think it is accurate, as Mr. Brock suggests, that because, just not out of the goodness of their heart, but just because of the cost involved, they do everything else they can do before they get to this point. Our ability to prohibit the construction of cell towers has been, removed from us, if you will. And we've been through this once before. We've heard this case. We were ready to approve it closer to your home than it is now. Is there anybody else here who wants to be heard on this matter? If not, and if nobody else has anything else they want to say, I'll take a motion.
Make a motion to approve it.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 16, SP 501. Would you cast your votes, please?
Thank you.
It is approved.
Could I ask for my booklets back? These are very expensive to print.
Item 17 is the election of Planning Commission officers.
Oh,
We want to do-
are we going to? Yeah, we're going to hear from our.
Let's do 12.
Okay. Do we want to go back to case 12 before
Yeah, why don't we do
this?
that first, if folks don't.
If they're ready to go, Curtis
Yeah.
might need to let them know that we're ready to hear SPD 1061.
I went back outside. Sarah's still negotiating.
Hey, Mike, rip one of those pages.
Thank you, Commissioners, and thank you for your indulgence. This is like Christmas.
All right. I don't know that it's like
Kind and
Christmas.
very helpful. So,
All right, so we're going C3 uses, deleting 8300.2. You want me to read these into the record? Would that be appropriate? Okay.
Yes.
Deleting 8300.27, communications services antennas, 8300.28, communications services broadcast towers, 8300.29, communications services limited, which would be TV studios, 8300.30, telecommunications towers, 8250.2, community recreation general, 8300.33, no, excuse me, 8300.36, eating establishments, fast food with drive-through window, 8300.44, funeral and interment services undertaking, 8300.57, payday or title loan agencies, 8300.60, personal storage, 8300.65, retail sales and services, pawn shops, and that's it. There are several uses that would be potentially allowed, but they have to come back for a special permit, which would give us the opportunity to review those at that time.
Yeah, I didn't think this was the way we were going with this. So if we're going to.
So we left the special, the thought was we left the SPs in, so they have to come back for any of those, which makes sense to me. It saves us from and then on the signs, we're agreed on that.
we are agreed, we're just not quite sure exactly what you were asking for, Mr. Hensley.
Oh.
Were you objecting to pylon signs and wanting this to only have monument signs, or?
Well, I think a monument sign.
Under the code, we're allowed pylon signs to 40 feet. We don't see a need for 40-foot signs.
That's a 40-foot monopole.
Yes, we certainly don't
we
see
don't
that.
want that. So my vision is landscape base, monument sign, 15 feet.
Okay.
Got it?
That work for you?
Yeah.
That's acceptable
You
to
know, it'd
us.
be, yeah, okay.
Okay.
So we're going to leave, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, this was not the way I was hoping we were going to do this. So we're leaving funeral services because that's a special
Special
permit
permit.
use?
Yeah, the SP uses, they got to come back for anyway.
Where do tattoo parlors fall in the grand scheme of things, Sarah?
It's personal services, which is the same as salons and nail parlors, so
I got no objection to that at that location. I mean, salon, barbershop,
Seems like a reasonable use.
right there at that corner. Could use one, actually. Tattoo.
Signs, non-accessory? Those are prohibited specifically, though, aren't they, in the SPD? Non-accessory signs?
well, they're conditional, and the condition is if the site's developed, they cannot be on the property.
They're not prohibited specifically by the SPD?
No, not yet, not now. Because signs are C3, all C3 signs.
Do you want to be specific and say that billboards are not permitted?
Billboards? Oh, sure.
Okay.
Billboards are not permitted. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so,
So we've taken out the objectionable uses, we've addressed the signs, we've agreed to the shared access to the south. Was there any other aspect?
What did we decide about the signs?
15 feet monument,
Okay.
Square footage?
100, what is that, about 120,
50?
50, 150? Sounds about right. 10 by 10 is 100.
Looking for some feedback here, gentlemen.
100,
Yeah, that would work.
That's sufficient.
We don't have a minimum corporately, but we can make this work, so.
What is, so 150, what is the deal with the driveway? Where are we on this?
did you decide where you're moving your driveway to the south?
We will slide south, and we'll get the shared access agreement with the property
Do
owner.
we want to set a linear distance from the corner? Do we want to set a distance from the turn lane? How can we?
Slide it to the south property line. I think that works.
Well, it has to be where it does not inhibit the functional operation of the intersection, is what traffic was telling me. I don't know what.
I'm just making
Yeah,
sure
I got your
comfortable
point.
with this language, this.
So
this
speak now if you
sliding
ever hold your
south.
peace, staff, if you're not.
You should say something.
Okay. We'll work with them to site that driveway in a place that gets it as far away from the intersection as possible and also meets the offset with the church driveway across the street.
And you're agreeable to that, applicant?
Yeah, that'd be good.
That's reasonable.
Give this back.
This is a nice sign.
Give this back to Sarah.
How tall is that one? I mean, that's really nice.
40 feet.
40, no, it's not.
Well, you like it so much, can we come back and change that 20 to 40 then? Is there?
This isn't 40. This is a nice sign, though. Very nice sign. Okay, so I feel a little bit better about the sign.
Okay, so are we there? Is there anybody else who wants to be heard on this matter? No? Comments, questions? Yeah, Michael, it's on you.
Yeah, okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the application, deleting from the C3 uses those previously read into the record, noting that no billboards, non-accessory signs will be permitted on the property, shifting the driveway to the south to line up with the church driveway. Is that right? I think that was what was.
Staff's going to work that out with them.
We will, as best we possible, but we've got a property line, and so we'll have to be cognizant of that property line. We'll try to
Understood.
shift as far and as line as best possible, but that property line will be controlled.
Right, understanding,
So
staying on your
just give us a
property.
little latitude there, if you will, please.
Right.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Took care of son, took care of C3 uses. And we've got a shared driveways already in the TEs, and you agree with the rest of the technical evaluation?
Sure.
As stated. That's my motion, I think.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 12, SPUD 1061, with the amendments and additions that have been stated. Would you cast your votes, please? It is approved.
Thank you, Commissioners,
Thank you.
for your indulgence. I'm sorry to belabor this.
Thank you.
Not at all.
I also want to thank Sarah for serving double duty today in JJ's absence. Her
Yes.
time spent in the Development Services Department has served her well in wearing both hats. Item 17, back to the election of Planning Commission officers.
Commission, what's your pleasure?
What's that even mean?
We have to re-elect the chair and the vice chair once a year. Currently, vice chair is Mr. Hensley and chair is Ms. Powers.
We're down 3 right now.
Are you suggesting we nominate them?
Well, that's usually the way it works at the Board of Adjustment. If you're gone, you end up as chair, trust me. That's how that goes down. Does that require a nomination? Okay, so I'll nominate Mike Hensley as vice chairman.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to approve Mr. Hensley as vice chair. Would you cast your votes, please? It's approved. I certainly am willing to do that.
Anybody else want the job right now? I'll nominate Commissioner Powers to be chair.
Second, also.
I have a motion and a second to approve Commissioner Powers, chair. Cast your votes, please. It is approved.
And the last item on the agenda is to appoint a Planning Commission member to serve on the Board of Adjustment.
Okay, so Commissioner Cravens, explain to everybody how easy it is to serve on the Board of Adjustment and how little time it takes and how it's very, very helpful to the overall education process for a planning commissioner to fill that seat.
Nominate Asa.
Please.
I'd like to nominate Asa Highsmith.
Second.
On the Board of Adjustment. It actually is not. I've enjoyed my time there. It's been great. I've learned a lot. You see a lot. It's a little different, obviously, because it's quasi-judicial. That's the one nice thing is nobody can talk to you beforehand, so you don't have to worry about that. I think it does help you understand how cases move through and how people try to move cases through various places within the city, and I think it's been a good experience. I think it helps me be a better planning commissioner, so I've enjoyed it. If you, in all sincerity, a time commitment, I would say I spend maybe an hour on Sunday morning drinking coffee, going over the packet, and then look at it one more time before the meeting, probably 30 minutes before I walk in the door and meet with city staff before the meeting starts. Outside of having to drive something or be there, something really, kind of outside the lines, it's about that clean. So
I've done it too, and it's not near the time commitment that PC is. I think Scott would agree with that.
Nowhere close.
Meetings are sometimes 20 minutes. I mean, they can be very fast, so it's not nearly a significant time commitment as this role at all.
I agree with that. It is, and I agree also that it's very helpful. It's just kind of a different look at how projects move forward through the system and kind of how the different agencies work together and, produce the best result. So have I got volunteers? That was the real question. Is there anybody who is ready to volunteer for the job?
How often do they meet?
Well, so my understanding is it's a 3-year appointment, but if it's a planning commissioner who's in that role, It can be as short as a year, essentially, right? Yeah. So,
Yeah, that's right. So if you were willing to take it on and wanted to revisit that a year from now, we'd be willing to do that.
if you show any shred of hesitation, I nominate Mike Privet. That's a motion, a second.
I have a motion, a second.
Doesn't matter, you're only one vote. Yeah. You should have sat there quiet. Call it. Yep.
I have.
When do they meet?
Alternate Thursdays.
First
so
and third Thursday.
You've already got your Thursdays blocked out. It's like just a, hard, it's like a long lunch hour. It's no big deal, right?
Yeah.
Don't laugh. I'm trying to sell it.
Motion second.
Okay, I have a motion second to approve Mike Privet as our Planning Commission appointment to the Board of Adjustment.
Godspeed, sir.
Cast your votes, please. It is approved. All right. So we are down to Planning Commission committees, of which there are none, Planning Commission members. And before anybody else speaks up, I want to say two things. We've lost Lee Cooper. He's been elevated to the City Council to fill the term of Ward 7 Councilman Pettis until an election in the fall. So short-term appointment, but he will not be rejoining us. So I just want to say I really have enjoyed working with him. He was very caring and involved and concerned council person. He was very much taken with the welfare of his community, and I'm sure he will do a marvelous job on City Council for the time that he is there. And then I want to welcome Curtis Liggins, who I will try not to refer to as the new Lance, to Development Services, but he is going to be helping us and getting some of the workload off of JJ's plate. So those of you who've had a hard time getting your telephone calls returned, that should come to a stop immediately. And I'm sure Curtis won't mind giving any of you his private cell phone number. You can just call him day and night. We'll try not to weigh you down too much as you're getting your feet under you and learning the ropes. But we're really glad to have you joining us. I'm in a new capacity. You've been with us for a while, but it's great to have you on board. Other members of the commission have any thoughts they want to share today? Other than let's get out of here? Is this okay?
Just echo your comments on both Lee and Gary. Caught me off guard. I didn't realize he was resigning last time. Both of them have always been very gracious and were a pleasure to work with, and I think did a great job representing their wards. So miss them both for sure.
Absolutely. The other side of that is we're now down to a fairly tight unit. If you have some reason to think you're not going to be here, let's give staff as much time as we can to make other arrangements. Not like they can replace any of us, but we're really at a place where, especially over this summer, we're going to have to juggle a little bit. So,
just so I'm reminded of the calendar, July we have 2 meetings. July 1, August 1, or just July 1?
July 1, August 2.
Okay, so we're only taking...
July 12th is the only July meeting.
Okay, and then we're having 2 meetings in August. Then we take 2 months.
Well, we decided to take June instead of August this year, but so we've only got 1 meeting this month.
Okay, so we don't have anything. Okay, got it. So we just rotated it back.
Right, yes, we just shifted, so. Anybody else, anything else? Staff, planning department?
Yes, we had discussed our topics that we've been trying to get placed on either study session or urban development committee agendas for you, and knowing that our kind of agreed upon approach of doing this the mornings or right before the regularly scheduled planning commission meeting is just not able to accommodate as much time as we need. And you had requested from staff to explore looking at doing a multiple item agenda that maybe would encompass like an afternoon or a morning session. We are prepared to survey you on your availability and wanted to know, do you want us to throw dates out to you to see if you're available within the next 3 months? Of the dates that you want us to throw out to you, are there any specific days of the week? Because it would be difficult for us to coordinate all of your calendars if we just throw out a blank survey saying, when are you available? So this is our dilemma, is every time that we've tried to figure out how to coordinate calendars, it's difficult to do that. Would you like us to look at a Thursday morning perhaps, so that whole Thursday of a planning commission day to see if you're available? Would you like us to look at other days of the week? Because we can send the survey out to be as specific with as many dates as possible on it, or start really nailing down Thursdays? Or any other ideas you have to try to align people's calendars?
Thursdays would be the
Thursdays
most
work for me.
ideal, because I've already got the time blocked. Monday's a non-starter. And Fridays I'll lie, so, yeah.
Okay. All right.
I would, again, I can be really flexible about this, so I don't have a strong preference. But for the rest of you, now that we're down to a smaller unit, and I think we really want to try hard to find a time and date when we can all be there. This will be an important time for us to spend together. So.
Okay. We'll send something to you soon. Thank you.
You sounded like you were about to say
I did.
something.
What is the typical time frame? I've seen it differently on the Board of Adjustment. What is the typical time frame for the replacement of a planning commissioner?
It varies, because I think that typically a council person will try to make a recommendation to the mayor and the planning commissioner. So it just depends on how long that search process and referral process might take. So I can't answer your question if there have been conversations or someone throwing their hat in the ring that have already happened. But I know that Council Support Office is working right now on getting our 2 vacancies filled.
And generally, often planning commissioners stay in their place until a replacement is found, but that just hasn't worked out this time around. So we're going to operate on a shorter roster for as little time as humanly possible, because it's, makes it difficult all the way around. Okay, what else? Where are we? Municipal Counselor's Office? No? Citizens to be heard. I don't see anybody out there. Other business. I never know what that means. Adjournment? Do I have a motion?
Motion. So moved.
Motion and second to adjourn. Cast your votes. We're adjourned. And Asa really dodged a bullet.